New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome back to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great pleasure and joy to host Growing Edge Live every week. And today we have a wonderful show in store for you. You're going to meet a good friend of mine, Carrie, and more about her in a minute. But for now, if you're here and you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We have great conversations with soul-centered individuals that are sharing and channeling their energy, their time, their joy, their creativity, their resources into doing good works in the world and supporting humanity in waking up and coming together in love. And so thank you for being here. We always start the show with a segment called Ask Allie. And today I have a question that's been sent in from Grady. And Grady says, I recently got introduced to chanting mantras at a spiritual gathering. Could you share your thoughts about the practice of chanting and why it's important? Thank you. Yes, Grady. Well, I too love chanting and love mantras and find them to be such a deepening and empowering part of my spiritual practice and ritual. I was introduced to it years ago, decades ago, from, well, many people, but one sticks out in my mind. Her name is Lorraine, and Lorraine Hortzmanshoff, and she would come to our spiritual center and share her beautiful music and do kirtan with us. And at that point, that's when I really started putting it into practice and also making mala beads, which are something that one can use with a mantra or a chant. There's 108 beads with a guru bead here, a little tassel. And by working these beads through your fingers, much like our Catholic friends who use a rosary use their prayer beads, the mala beads are used for prayer, for devotion. And a mantra is like an affirmation. It's a phrase or a group of sentences that have a particular meaning. And Deepak Chopra, I looked this up this morning, says mantras are sounds or vibrations that create a desired effect, such as healing, transformation, or self-awareness to a specific area of your body and or your life. Everything in creation is at its most refined level a sound or vibration. And so the words of a mantra or a chant have a particular essence, a meaning, a prayer, a vibration, a sound. And it's said that if one chants a mantra, and many mantras have existed for eons, for thousands of years, and so millions of people have uttered these words, these sounds, these vibrations that hold a particular intention. And so a mantra, you can think of it like a shortcut to the divine. You think of this a city, and you can take the regular route that Siri or your sat nav will tell you how to get to a particular place. But then there's the shortcuts that the locals know about. Well, a mantra, a chant, is like a shortcut right to the ears of the universe. And so I have a couple that I love to use. There's the Buddhist mantra Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And this embodies the essence of Buddhism, the conviction that we have within us at any moment, the ability to overcome any problem or challenge that we might encounter in our lives. Last night, I was watching a new show on I think it was on Netflix, with Orlando Bloom called To the Edge. And I think the first episode, he was skydiving and learned to do it in a wingsuit, which I guess is particularly difficult. And so he was chanting this, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And he kept saying it over and over again. And this was a way that he harnessed that energy, that bodhisattva energy of embodying the awakened mind, the awakened peace and presence that exists within all of us. So he would do this throughout the show. And then the second episode, which we watched, was he was doing the free diving, where you go super deep down, 100 meters, I think he did. And again, he was using this mantra to align him with the energy of overcoming any challenge. Another mantra that I love to say or sing is the Gayatri mantra. And this is one that you can find on YouTube. David Primal has a version where she sings. Oh, my Siri is chirping in to give me advice where to find that one. Anyway, back to reality. So the Gayatri mantra is a beautiful mantra that we can use in the morning. It's particularly powerful when the sun's rising. And it goes like this: Om Bhuvaha, Om Bhu Bhuvaha Svaha, Tat Savitur Varenium, Bhargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodayat. I know it's a long phrase or a long mantra, but if you learn it, it's a beautiful process in learning it. And the general meaning is we meditate on the Creator, whose divine light illumines all realms, physical, mental, spiritual realms. And may this light illumine our intellect, our body, and our soul. And so again, the Gayatri mantra is a beautiful way to start the day, to harness that energy, to activate that power within us, to see the light, to know the light, and to be the light. So, Grady, I hope that has answered some of your questions about why it's important and how to do it. And I trust that your journey with learning mantras will support you in finding your light and transforming your life and any challenge that might arise for you. So peace and blessings to you wherever you are. And for anyone that has a question that you would like us to dive into here at Growing Edge Live, you can send me an email at growingedgelive@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to bring that on and explore it with you. So thank you. All right, so now we move to our conversation. And today I have Carrie Stiers, who is a good friend of mine. I met her a couple of years ago through my good friend John Moore, and I interviewed him last week. So you can find that episode on YouTube at thesatyacenter or at New Thought Media Network. Anyway, shout out to New Thought Media Network for having all of our videos all lined up and archived for us to watch. So Carrie is, I'm going to read her bio because she's so interesting. Here we go. She is an internationally known psychic medium, intuitive life coach, and astrologer who delivers messages and intuitive guidance to her clients from the angels, spirit guides, and deceased loved ones that are in spirit. Carrie radiates truth, integrity, and insight into all of her readings and all of the sessions that she does. She helps beautiful souls from all around the world make important life decisions by connecting with spirit, finding their path forward, and healing their wounds, and tap into their own intuitive abilities. So I'm excited to dive into how these abilities came up for her, which we're going to hear about. And Carrie she's a guest on podcasts, on shows. She's learned from some amazing teachers that she'll share with us. And Carrie, thank you for being my guest today on Growing Edge Live.
Oh my goodness gracious. This is such an honor. And I say this to everyone because to be in Allie Benjamin's presence is to be in the presence of so much love and peace. And for those of you who don't know Allie in person, when you meet her in person, it's the same thing. It translates the same way in person, if not more so powerfully than it does on camera. What a peaceful effect you have on me, a calming effect you have on this crazy Gemini with a, Aries moon, who I get very excited about things. I get very, very excited and and Allie Benjamin's like this beautiful tonic and elixir. So anyway, it is just an honor to be here, and I love you so much. And I'm so excited to share this space with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I feel the same about you. And as you were saying that, you're a Gemini with an Aries moon. I'm the opposite. I'm an Aries with a Gemini moon. And I just wonder, because I'm no astrologer, I'm wondering what the significance of that is. And
I think it creates a beautiful balance in the yin and the yang. And it's probably why we understand each other so beautifully. Many reasons.
Yeah, wonderful. So I was reading in your bio that you are a psychic medium, and I would love to hear your story, your origin story. How did all of this come up for you? Were you just born awake, aware of other dimensions? How did it all start?
I know it's such a strange thing. You ask people how they become a teacher or a doctor, and we have a very logical explanation for that. There's education there, okay? But in terms of being an intuitive in this world and a medium, there's always more of a backstory here. So in my situation, I was born and raised in the Midwest in a very small little town in Indiana, with two fairly open-minded parents. And my parents worked, and it was my dear grandmother who really raised me, who spent a lot of time with me as a child. And when I was 5 years old, she passed unexpectedly in her garden. And at her funeral, that is really, for me, it's my first memory. Of course, we're so young. It's hard as we get older, it's harder to remember earlier. But that's my first conscious memory at that moment of what I can cognitively remember of having an experience. And although my parents told me that I was having those experiences, that's the first one I remember. And when I was at her funeral, it's a little bit of a long story, but I'll tell you all. When I was at her funeral, my grandmother was a very, very proud member of the Methodist Church, in this little town. And she sang in the choir. She was a very beloved member of that church. And upon her passing, we had an open casket funeral. So she was literally in a casket, at the front of the church with an open casket so you could see her body. And I remember sitting in the church pew, the second church pew, waiting for the funeral to start. And just as the music began, this processional music began, all of a sudden I heard someone call me by my nickname behind me. And this is a nickname that only my grandmother used. And you better believe that my ears perked up. And I remember turning around and looking up the aisle of the church. And all of a sudden, my grandmother, who was supposed to be in that casket, was bounding down the center aisle of the church, dressed in her Sunday best, with two friends behind her. And she gets to the end of the pew, and she looks at me, and I must have been looking at her in a very startled way, because when you're 5 years old, you're like, what in the world is going on here? This is a little confusing. I've got a body in the casket, and the same body is right here. And she said, well, hello, pumpkin. And I was like, what are you doing here? She's like, well, I'm here for my big day. Now you need to scoot on down. She was directing me, as she always did, telling me what to do. Now you need to scoot on down here. I'm here for my big day and I've got some friends, so I'm going to need some extra room. I remember that because it wasn't even just her. She had two older women with her. I didn't even stop to think who they were. And because it was my grandmother, and probably because I was in a certain amount of shock, I did what she told me to do very quickly. And so I remember whispering into my mother's ear, who whispered into my father's ear, who whispered into my grandfather's ear. And it was like a game of telephone down the line. And lo and behold, everyone scooted down and gave me space and created this space here at the end of the pew for me to sit with my grandmother and her two friends.
Oh my goodness.
And I was 5 years old because I was in kindergarten when that happened. Yeah, I was in kindergarten. So that was, wow. I was 5 years old. And what do you say about this? I mean, some people would say, oh my gosh, the child is seeing things. The child has an imaginary friend. She's crazy, psychotic, delusionary. I don't know what you would say about it. But for me, when I remember it clear as day. And little did I know that back then that I'm very clairvoyant. So my my way of seeing is sight. So some people hear things, some people feel things, or would get a feeling or would hear something. But for me, I see images and pictures. Mm. And I remember her during the funeral. I remember the preacher talking. I remember her sitting very properly, listening in rapture, to the preacher. And when the choir sang, because that's the choir that she sang in, she was clapping and she was smiling. And then she started crying. And she and her two, I believe, must have been her mother. So I believe that was my great grandmother there. And maybe a sibling next to her. But they were just all into it. They were into it. And as a result, during the funeral, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid. I didn't have the same level of sadness because in my mind, I was seeing that she was alive. She was acting like she did when she was in the 3D form. So she felt very alive to me next to her. So I wasn't upset during the funeral. I think I was more in awe of her. But at the end of the funeral, I got a little triggered because when everything was said and done, she got up to leave. Mm. And then I looked at her and I was like, wait a second. Where are you going? Where are you going? And she said, I have to go. And I remember saying to her, no, you can't leave me. You can't leave me here. You can't leave me with these people. I think I remember saying, you can't leave me with them. And she said, okay, little pumpkin, I love you. Listen, you will see me. You will always be able to see me. And you have a very special gift. And you have this gift that you're going to be able to see others. But I'll let you know, I'm never very far. Okay. I'm always with you. Don't forget that. And I love you. And I remember she says this to me. And then it was like, she was gone. She was just gone. She was just gone.
Wow.
So it was like, she just disappeared into thin air. And, I remember turning to my mother and telling my mother that same day this story, and bless my mother's heart, she didn't tell me I was crazy. She just listened very open-heartedly to me. My parents are very spiritual, and she was very open to life after death and the idea that the soul would potentially go on. And she just listened. She was like, I remember her being, wow, what a special experience you just had. And wow. So that's where because everyone asks, okay, what was that first moment like? Or what was that defining moment like? And I know that everyone has a different story in terms of how their intuition or how their spiritual sight kind of comes to be. But that was absolutely for me, that first defining moment, that there might be something more, that there might be something more to the story. Do people really die? Is death finite? Is it, dust to dust? And do we never, are we just, is life over and done with? So that was my first data point, that there was something more, or potentially something more beyond this realm. And also, I don't think I understood it at the time. At the time, I just thought, well, this happened to me and it's normal. But of course, as you get older, you realize, okay, maybe it's not so normal. It is normal, but maybe it's not so normal in relationship to society and in terms of what we teach people is normal and what's not normal.
Right. So it sounds like your parents were, you mentioned that they're very spiritual, and I happen to have met them, and they're lovely people. So how were you religious folk? Were you spiritual, not religious, or spiritual and religious? How did that all play into, your spiritual / religious life?
Yeah, my parents have both been raised in the church. My dad was Methodist. My mother was raised Southern Baptist in the South, which they definitely have a different belief system around this, but still with that same belief system that life is eternal and that the soul goes on. So there is still some of that base. But I think that souls, we all just come in the way we are, in relationship to our family, even if we're different from our family. So my parents were very fairly open-minded, and they had spent time in Africa with the Methodist Church as missionaries. They were teaching, my dad was educated in California in the UC California system. And my parents had traveled a lot. So they came back to the family farm in this small town. My mom was just I have to tell you, my mother is really the one who was really spiritually open-minded. And it's so interesting because even though we grew up in this very small conservative community in Indiana, she had a group of friends there from the church who were just so fascinated by psychics. I mean, they were just so into it, which would be a little bit counterintuitive to what the church would teach. And there is a spiritualist church in Indiana called Camp Chesterfield, which is just northeast of Indianapolis, similar to, oh my gosh, what's the one in upstate Lilydale? My brain almost went blank there. So Lilydale in upstate New York is probably the most famous spiritual camp or church in the world, similar to that. Called Camp Chesterfield, and my mother would always go up there for readings. And that's where at some point that's where she introduced me when I began to have many more experiences. And my mom was finally like, okay, my kid's different. She's having all these experiences and maybe she needs to talk to someone. And one of the psychic mediums that she was working with there, spiritual teachers, the Reverend Suzanne Greer, who is well known in the spiritual world, said, bring that kid up here. I was 12 at the time. And she's like, bring that kid up here. And that began kind of my apprenticeship, even though I didn't know that that's what it was at the time. Anyway, I'm a Gemini. I'll talk to you forever. P.S.
Oh my gosh, you're just stirring up so many questions in my mind. So how did this impact your friends and life at school? Could you compartmentalize somehow, or did it leak out?
I would say it started leaking out when I got a little bit older. I think when I was younger, I think I was having experiences but didn't understand. And I think a lot of people who are watching this can probably relate to this, which is when you're young, I was such an open sponge. I was so spongy. I would go into a room and I would be able to feel the energy. I think probably a lot of you who are watching this or, listening to this can probably relate to that, about what it means when you walk into a room and you can get the vibe or feel the vibe, or you meet someone and they've really not said much to you, but you have a really good idea, a strong feeling about their personality, or you get a sense of them. I was having that experience a lot. I was also, when I was very young, I was seeing souls. I would just see souls who had really intense transitions, or people who had accidents, or who had gone out of their body really young, that were kind of scary to me, quite honestly, that were scary. And that's kind of what led me, I think, to talk to my mom. And I think that's really, really what prompted her to get me some support, because I was seeing suicides. I was seeing people that had accidents who were their energy. They were having a hard time transitioning. But I think that you're asking me a question I'm having to put a lot of thought into, which is, I think before I turned 12 or 13, I think it was just a part of my life, and I didn't think very much about it. I just thought, wow, I'm really sensitive. And at that time, you have to understand that was like in the 80s. So there wasn't a lot of, it's not like, today, we're years later, we talk about spirituality and intuition a lot more. And at that time, it's just not something we even talked about. So it's like, I don't even think I knew to identify as such.
Yeah. So when you started apprenticing with this woman, and one of our viewers is saying, any insights on psychic protection? So you were having these visions or seeing things and being disturbed. Your mother took you to the spiritualist church, and you met this medium. Did she give you any soothing advice to help you deal with this or give you some protection in some way?
I think absolutely. I think the key that she gave me, and to answer that question directly, is what I was taught. I think when you start to actually work with someone, or you start to really intentionally work on your intuitive channels, what we realize is that it is, we think in terms of our mentality. I think there's a mentality in the world of is the world controlling us, or are we in control of our own realities, right? And I think there's this whole push-pull here around that. And I think about feeling like, are we a victim of our circumstances, or are we empowered, and can we make choices to really direct or protect ourselves? And I think in terms of intuition, what I was really taught was that I had a lot more say and a lot more input in terms of what I was experiencing and what I was not. And at that point, in my teens, I was really educated about the team around me, my team around me in spirit, which is something that I teach about a lot and that I talk about a lot. This idea that no one comes here, without a blueprint, so no one comes here without a map. There's a soul blueprint, and no one comes here without support. And at that point, Suzanne, the Reverend Suzanne Greer, who is my mentor in spirit and will always be, really was talking to me about the fact that if there was something that was making me feel uncomfortable, that I had the ability to speak up, and that it was important for me to speak up and let my team know in spirit, my guides and my team in spirit and God universe, or however you want to say that, to tell them, hey, I need you guys to shut this down. This is freaking me out. I can't handle this right now. So if you're going to give it to me, you need to give it to me differently. And it was interesting that it was almost like immediately that as soon as when I would have a scary experience, or something that would make me feel uncomfortable, I would literally just say no. And I would just tell my team, no, I don't like that. That's freaking me out. Or can you help me understand that? And as soon as I started saying no, it stopped. And that's interesting. I would also, she also taught me to pray for souls, that if I had an experience that frightened me, to pray for those souls as well. So in terms of psychic protection, I think probably one of the first important things that I was taught is to remember that we are not at the whims of the world, and we're not at the whims of the spirit world, that we have a lot of tools within ourselves. And I think the first one that I was taught to use is to speak up and use my voice, and to really let spirit know, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with, and this is what I'm not. I think in terms of, kind of we're answering this question a little bit deeper, I think that it's just important for all of us. I was just talking with a client this morning and mentoring a client this morning about this. It's important for all of us to really ascertain each and every day where we're at energetically, and to figure out what we can tolerate and what we can't tolerate. And I have to be honest with you, I think anyone who gives you one set thing for every day, is incorrect, because I think our energy field is always shifting each and every day. It's a little bit more complicated. I know people say, oh, put yourself in a bubble. Oh, surround yourself in the light. Well, yes, but there are days when your energy field can absorb more, and there are days when your energy field can absorb less. And there are certain people that you can tolerate more from, and there are certain people that you can't. So I think it's about having that awareness. I think a lot of the work kind of comes back to personal awareness and knowing yourself on a deep level, in terms of being in communication with yourself on a daily basis to ascertain where you're at. And then you're kind of essentially, in terms of that perimeter that we all have around us, that shield that we have around us, that energetic perimeter around each and every one of us, we're adjusting that day by day and moment to moment, because I think it's pretty nuanced. But in terms of I don't know, shielding or protecting or thinking of of an energetic perimeter and thinking about, I think for me, energetically, it helps to just say, how close do I want to be to this energetically? How is it affecting me? And how is it impacting me? If it's expansive, I want to get closer. If it's contracting and scary, I want a little bit more distance.
Great. All right,
Sorry.
we can jump off. No, you're good. We're jumping off for just a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, thesatyacenter, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
We're back, and we're back with my friend Carrie, and we're talking all things psychic medium and more. And I'm wondering, what does your work look like, and how has it evolved over time? What is it you do with people?
My work, I feel like I always call myself a cheerleader for humanity. I'm going to say here that, I think my work is really centered around helping people to remember their own divinity and to connect to the divinity within them. So my sessions normally start with me tuning into someone's energy. I normally go into meditation before a session, and I'm writing down a lot of notes. I like to have a lot of notes before I start. And I love tuning into the essence of someone and to to what the special, beautiful qualities that they bring to the table. And also normally Spirit also lets me know what this soul is here to work on and what they're working on and what they're here to master, because P.S., we're all in school, we're all learning, we're all growing here. Okay. We all chose to come here for a reason, to evolve and grow. And I love that portion of my sessions. And my sessions also are, really what I'm doing is I don't ask for anything. I want to always go in cold to a session So I just really am asking spirit. And what I mean by spirit, it's kind of a collective term that I'm using, that I use to talk about the team that's around this soul. So I'm talking about spirit guides, I'm talking about ancestors and loved ones. Pets are there. I've got my dog here. Sassy is here snoring away. We've completely conked her out. She is very into your energy, Allie. Okay. She is gone. She is snoring, literally snoring here. I call it the spirit snore. That's I call it a little spirit snore. She helps me in my readings. But pets are there. Teachers, guides, okay, loved ones are there. So I'm tuning into that energy and I'm really asking, okay, what's coming up for this soul? What's happening here? So oftentimes I'll write down areas of discussion that spirit wants to talk about or things that are coming through for me. I'll also tune in and see who wants to come through. And sometimes that's a guide and sometimes that's a loved one. And a lot of times ancestors absolutely want to come through. Loved ones from the other side absolutely want to come through. Sometimes just to say hello and to say, hi, we're here and we're with you and we love you. And sometimes the work is very involved where there's trauma there, or there is history, there's trauma that needs to be healed and worked out. So a loved one coming through with an apology, suicides. I say that too, souls who have taken their own lives who need to come back and talk about that. And other times it's loved ones coming through just with love and saying, hi, I love you and I want to talk to you. And sometimes, like I said, it's pets, it's anyone. And so I kind of document all of that and then we jump into session. Now, I also love, because my dear mentor, Suzanne, also taught me a lot about numerology and astrology. So I like to look at that too. I'm a total Gemini in that as well. I love to look at numerology. It's very old school. I know everyone else nowadays likes all these other modalities, but she was very old school with me. So I look at some of those pieces as well. I take a little bit of this and that, but really the primary piece of a reading with me is really tuning into what are you here? What are you doing here? What are you working on? Where are you growing? How are you awesome? Who's coming through? And then kind of getting into whatever the issues are that my client has that they really want to dig into. I have a thing with names where I have no idea how it works, but I'm able to write a name down and I'm able to just immediately go straight into the Akashic records and we're able to, it's a thing that I have, but psychically. But yeah, so.
Yeah, so we hear about, well, I've heard about the Akashic records, and maybe we've got people that don't know what that is. Can you explain how that works with a psychic medium? What
Absolutely.
it is?
Absolutely. The Akashic records, it's a term, and I don't really know that it's a term that's always been used throughout time. I feel like it's more of a modern term that we're using now. I'm kind of like semantics. It feels like a little bit, that term to me feels a little bit of semantics. But it's this idea that there is a collection of, in the non-physical on the other side, that there is a collection of all knowledge and all information. And this is essentially, it's a library, if you want to say, a record, a library of everything that has ever been. And I'm not just talking about here on planet Earth. I'm talking about the idea of all creation. And we think about the idea that, just to open our minds up to the idea that this might be just one place that souls incarnate, that this might be one place that this might just be one place that we have experiences. So this would be like a library of sorts that would connect to information to all of history, all of time, in all places, spaces, and time. And
so this tapping in you must be able to get a really good sense of the person, where they are in their life, and support them in their next step.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so a lot of psychic mediums or a lot of intuitives, what they're doing is they're tapping in essentially to that library. And a lot of people call that the Akashic records, but you can call it whatever you want to. I mean, when I was being trained, when I was being mentored, that term wasn't in existence, but you're tuning into the energy of that history there, that information of some sort. So,
yeah. So I'm imagining that, I'm thinking about who might benefit from seeing a psychic medium, coming to have a session with you. And I know for myself, having lost some loved ones, that talking to a psychic medium can be very soothing and comforting in times of loss, especially when you lose someone really close to you. And then there's also just in general, talking to a psychic medium to help you get clear on who you are and what's next. I think it must be about reminding them who they really are, because we get so sort of weighed down by the world and our conditioning and life, and sort of lose connection with our own inner wisdom and our own sense of purpose or meaning. So can you share maybe an example of how you may have worked with someone that was struggling to find their way forward in something, and how something that you told them, shared with them, helped them to remember, led them down a different path, or a more joy, or more whatever?
You're asking me to use my memory. It's a very funny thing. And I don't know if you feel this way in terms of doing your work. But my brain, the way it works in session is my brain is very, I don't retain information. I will recall some things for you, but you're bringing up a funny thing, because when people ask me to talk about sessions or remember sessions, it's like when I'm there in the moment, I'm living it, I'm so deeply into the energy. But when the moment is gone, it's like out of my head. It's like literally out of me. It's out of me. Sometimes it's hard for me to even recall things, because it's like we're talking about coming in and breaking that connection, everything, but it's like it didn't come from me. So the idea that when it doesn't come from us, that when it doesn't come from my brain, or it's not coming from me, it leaves me almost just as immediately, just as immediately.
How about maybe a personal,
But no, but I mean, I'll speak to this, because I think that in terms of doing sessions, I think that, we all just get so lost in the minutia, I think we're all here under the amnesia, right? We're all here under the amnesia. And there's a whole reason for that, which is we are meant to focus in on this lifetime. And as a result of that, focusing in on this lifetime, that it's really easy to get caught up. And I always say it takes a village to raise, there is a famous book written about, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I absolutely believe it takes a village to raise a human. And I just think when you add an intuitive into your support team, what you're doing is you're adding a different vantage point and a different support point, into your team. And that's the reason, that's what I always say. I'm like, I'm just a part of your support team, and I'm giving you a totally different perspective. Past life things will come through. So I'm sitting here stalling, trying to remember exactly.
No, you're not. You're really
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the reason.
No, I think that's really helpful, because when you see a medium or a psychic medium, you as a client, or the person sitting with the medium, you're always wondering, what, is this just something they're making up? But to know that it's almost like you're channeling some information or some guidance or something that will support them, but it's not just coming from you, it's flowing through you. And that, to me, that's inspiring, because I'm sure that then plants the seed within that person that they too can open up to their own guides. And so maybe share a little bit about that. How do we tune into our guides, our angels, our ancestors, and hear from them?
And I thank you. You're so adept at what you do. I'm smiling with you. You're like, I'm redirecting. But I will circle back to what you just said, which is in terms of clients, I will say that I get a lot of questions in terms of people coming in and saying, why am I so unhappy in this job? Or what's going on in this relationship, and seeing things from a higher spiritual perspective. Oftentimes it's because, well, you're meant to be doing something else, because your real life purpose, and those answers come through. And in terms of relationships, well, this is, some relationships are meant to be teachers, and are meant to be lessons. And it's because this is a teaching relationship, this is a teaching relationship. So the dynamic here is different. So also trying to get to understand, get some level of understanding. A lot of times people come to me and I'm like, well, this isn't the soulmate. The soulmate's coming. This is the teacher. This is the lesson. This is the teacher. So also trying to understand, past life connections as well. And just trying to understand what is the whole purpose, what's the what's the meaning behind what's going on here? Anyway, I'm sorry. How to connect. I'm trying to answer the question. I'm literally asking my team. I'm like, can you please give me an example? I'm like, help me, please.
This is perfect.
And I've literally, now you all see me in my total authenticity that, hello, intuitives, we're just like you. People ask us questions and we're like, circle back to me. I don't have an answer for you, although I know an answer exists here in my brain. It's called, I also do a ton of readings, and then something, just a ton of readings. I do need to start recording this. My guys are laughing hysterically at me. You all don't have to laugh at me. I'm just having my own moment right now where I'm feeling incredibly like laughing at myself. How to tune into intuition. Let's move on, shall we?
Yeah. I love you.
How to tune into intuition. Well, first off, can we just affirm the fact that, we're all intuitive? Can we all just affirm this? That there is, please do not look to spiritual teachers as being gurus. I really want to get rid of this whole idea that somehow other people have a gift, but I don't, or other people have vision, but I don't. We are all born sentient beings. And I really feel like that is I think that this is a part of the change that's going to come into our education system. And this is a part of the change that's going to come into our collective in the next 250 years. I know that sounds so long, but I really kind of feel like that's where we're at here. That, in terms of not only are we going to start learning about our intellectual state of awareness, but we're also going to start learning about all these different other states of awarenesses that we have. And one of them, of course, being our intuitive state of awareness. So for me, I love to really, for a lot of folks, just to start tuning into the heart, and to start tuning into the heart and also the mind. This whole idea of having this idea that opening our minds up to the concept that life is eternal and that our loved ones and our team on the other side are constantly sending us messages and constantly communicating with us in all sorts of interesting ways. So that whole idea of having that open mind first and foremost, and also having that open heart. I feel like we're all using our intuition every single day, all the time. We're just not calling it as such. So it's not that I don't want to teach you how to use your intuition. I kind of also really want to help people understand how they're already doing it, but they're not even consciously aware of it. I mean, I always use this example. My guides always tell me, even when you're at the grocery store trying to figure out, okay, what toothpaste do I want to buy? Or what, like what food do I want to purchase? We're using our intuition in that very moment because we're feeling into the energy of each product. We're feeling into the energy of each fruit, okay, or vegetable. We're feeling into the energy, and that is a form of intuition. So right there, it's the idea of just having, I think, an open heart and open mind. And I think another important aspect of this is also setting intentions and asking questions and then saying, okay, I'm going to get out of the way here. I'm going to open my heart and open my mind to see how that question, how that question is answered. And I think that's also really important, is to be talking and asking spirit or asking God universe or asking your guides for support and help. Because when we ask the question, when we set the intention and we ask the question, and then we open our heart and open our mind, then we create space for spirit to really work some magic and come to us. And, that might come in the form of hearing something on TV or something that a friend says to you, or seeing something, or seeing a feather or a cardinal, or having a dream where you see something in a dream or you experience something in a dream, or just getting a strong sense, within yourself. These would be ways in which to connect. And I also want to just say something here in terms of connecting to our loved ones in spirit, because I know so many of us are missing our loved ones and our pets and our loved ones and are so longing to connect. I think that we have made it into being this very complicated process in terms of connecting to our loved ones. What I'm always told in session is that every thought we ever have of our loved ones, our ancestors, our loved ones on the other side, is them basically reaching out to us and letting us know that they're there. That every even thought that they get into, that every thought we have is a connection to them. So I don't want to overcomplicate that. I think that's a really important thing to say here. They tend to get into our minds here. They'll jump into our minds, but also looking for those signs like feathers and cardinals and butterflies and wind, chimes, and being open, be really, really being open in terms of how, or just anything that was special to you. Maybe it's a scent or a smell or a song, or a place, and just being open in terms of how that information comes through. I don't know. I could talk about that for 10 hours.
Yeah, no, it sounds like what you're saying is if we pay more attention, slow down and just really tune in to the world around us, that we will be, whether it's a thought that pops in or something we see, an interaction with some wildlife, all of that is sort of a way that we're communicating with multi-dimensions, things that we don't see, things that we don't understand while we're incarnated in a human form. But there's a part of us, that ineffable part of us that's ageless, timeless, infinite, eternal, that occasionally, and I'm thinking this is what you're saying, if we're still enough, if we're paying attention enough, we tap into those sort of dormant qualities where we can get a sense of we're not alone, that there is guidance for us, and it comes in many different forms.
I also think it's, in addition to that, I would say it's also just observing that there is this beautiful divine alchemy that's taking place all the time. For me, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that everything is a sign. And I believe that everything that's happening in my life, that's how I see that everything is information from the divine, and everything is information from the beyond. Now, some of that information is coming from your team in spirit, from your loved ones. Some of that's coming from your higher self as well. But this idea as well of just being open to the idea, sorry about the noise as it happens outside my window, but being open to the idea that everything here, it's all information. That the idea, Sassy agrees, the idea, the spirit store comes in, the idea that everything is information, everything is here to help us, every little thing, it's all magic, and that there are no coincidences. So also to get beyond the mind and be like, oh my gosh, that was weird, and being like, no, that wasn't weird. That was, that was intentional. That was spirit getting your attention,
Yeah, I always say odd. No, God.
No, not odd.
It's a way of, it's the divine into, sending you some guidance there. So I always end this show, and I can't believe we're right here close to the end of the show. That's how it rolls with us, doesn't it? We could talk for hours. So I always end the show with reminding us of a song. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. And I know that's the truth, and I know that that's really what the world does need. But from where you are, from the very growing edge of your life, what do you see that the world needs now as you chat with people, as you go about your life? What is it in these sort of chaotic times of shift and change, and what does the world need now? What do people need to hear?
Well, I love that song. I think the world does need more love. I think what the world also needs is just a little bit of a greater awareness about the fact that the soul, as Dr. Brian Weiss so beautifully always says, that the soul really is on a continuum. And this idea that this isn't it, folks, that this is such a temporary, this is just a pit stop. It's a very temporary part of your journey. And the idea that our souls are literally, as he describes, are on this continuum in and out of different states of consciousness. And that time is not running out for us, and time is not running out for humanity. That there's this concept of eternity, and that we have an infinite amount of time here to work it out for our souls, both individually and collectively. So take a breath and know that where you are at individually right now and where the world is at, that it is perfect. And that your timing is perfect, and that the world's timing is perfect. So I would say patience, and gratitude for the moment, and an understanding that we've got, that life goes on, and that we are here, that we are growing and evolving perfectly. These are my thoughts for this second. It'll change in 5 minutes.
Well, that's very comforting, very soothing to take into our days, because things are changing and we are all growing. And I think just based on what I see out there, people are getting more interested in, I've got grandchildren, and I hear the word manifesting a lot. It's kind of come around. It's now really popular, and people are talking about, manifesting a better life or manifesting this and that. And I think it's really powerful to know that we do have influence over our own lives. And if we're paying close enough attention, that, like you, we can tune into our guides and get support from our ancestors. By the way, where's your grandma now? Does she show up in your daily life, or does she show up in readings occasionally?
Always. She always does. I always laugh and say that she always does. I was just talking to her before I came in today because I knew we'd be talking about her. And I was like, okay. And she was like, don't worry, it'll all unfold perfectly. But yes, my family, we have a connection to cardinals in our family. So every day on my walk, she says good morning to me with a cardinal. Almost every day I see her. But I just, more than anything, I feel her, I think of her. She comes into my mind so much. And again, every time she floats into my mind, I know that's her just circling around saying, hello, sunshine. Hello, I love you. And I just feel that. And I say hello back.
Now, on your website, you were actually holding a cardinal.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Well, it was a fake cardinal. A little stagey there. Okay. I'm not a bird whisperer. I am not Snow White in the Seven Dwarfs. The birds are not flocking to me.
I saw that. And when you told me that the cardinal is a sign that your grandma's close.
Yes, so that's like a little, for those of you who know me, the cardinal, I'm like, so I had this little cardinal that I wanted to like photograph and hold the cardinal.
There it is. Look at that.
So that is definitely, that's grandma. Those are my ancestors. So when I see the cardinal, I'm like, oh, my ancestors.
It's beautiful. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for being our guest today. I love you so much and appreciate you and the work that you're doing in the world, the lives that you're touching, and your energy is so sweet, so loving. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Allie. I love you dearly. And to those of you who are watching, love to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And love to everyone. Lots of prayers, lots of love. And we'll see you next Monday with Anthony Diaz. And I look forward to seeing you back again. And thank you to Michael, our producer, and to the New Thought Media Network. And of course, the thesatyacenter. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, on the growing edge.